so that we can communicate better with the people you have given us to love. Amen. I've been counseling in one capacity or another for 18 years now. All my teaching is one-on-one with couples, and I am not a pastor or a public speaker, which should become obvious right away as I need to read from my notes here. But I'm humbled and honored for this opportunity to speak to you. And I ask for your patience and grace as I try to share with you one of the most powerful tools I use in my work. Learning to listen so we can listen to learn. Overcoming the hurdles to effective communication. Everyone agrees that good communication is a foundation of success in marriage, yet most couples struggle in this area for years. Let's start off with the absolute hardest thing in counseling I have to do. Yes, being still and waiting is agony. Our minds naturally fill up the silence with all kinds of thoughts. Did he forget what to say? Has he been struck with stage fright? What should we do? Somebody should say something. Let's start with our general communication with others. The most important gift you can give another person is to shut off the running dialogue in your mind and focus on really hearing that person. Not just their words, but the heart and meaning behind the words. Many conversations start out fluffy and superficial, but they can soon become deeper and impactful if we have the care and patience to let them get there. But most of us listen for something instead of listening to someone. On the most common level, if you were to eavesdrop on someone else's conversation, you would probably observe that the most people are listening for their turn to talk. If the subject is on one of your children receiving a high grade on a report card, they will immediately tell you about the grade their child got, barely noting the grade you mentioned. If you share you're looking for a newer car, they will tell you about their last purchase and all they went through to buy it. If you mention that you really hate lima beans or chickpeas, they will respond with a list of what they hate or that they really love chickpeas, which are garbanzos. Most of us have been thoroughly trained by our culture to talk at people and listen for our turn to talk. Is it any wonder that one of the most common issues we find in marriage and romantic relationships is a lack of effective communication? That is because no one has taught us to listen, not just hear, but to really receive what the other person is saying, to respond to it, not with our story, but with questions, to better understand the significance of their information to the person who shared it. So, silently shoot off a skyrocket prayer, God, help me to actively listen and put all my stuff aside, and then proceed to ask a question that seeks additional information. Were you expecting such a high grade for this child? What do you think made a difference this time? Was the grade for a specific subject or just generally for all their studies? What type of car are you looking at? Any particular color? Is fuel economy a big factor? How many miles do you drive each month on an average? How much seating, cargo space? Any good prospects so far? When did you discover that you hated lima beans? Do they taste different from chickpeas? What is it that you dislike about them, taste or texture? What do you do when you find them in a prepared dish that someone has served you? Do you have any sneaky techniques for slipping them to the dog under the table? Do you see what we've done here? We fought our natural tendency to need to share our information, our experiences, our funny stories, and we've focused our attention fully on someone who is not us. It is human nature to seek to be understood far more than we seek to understand. In order to actually connect with another person, we need to overcome that natural behavior and instead practice the habit of focusing our attention on others and what is important in their lives. Often, but not always, this can result in the other person then starting to ask questions and take an interest in finding out what's happening and important in our lives too. This is the gateway to deeper understanding and longer lasting friendships. Now, closer to home, in our conversations with our spouses, a second almost impossible requirement to active listening has to do with respect. And waiting is involved. Don't start speaking until the other person has stopped talking. We all get excited about replying. So before the other person has completed their sentence, we jump in and finish it for them. And then without even stopping to take a breath, we continue on with what we have to say in response. Here is a real test if you want to truly become a good listener. Pause for a full 2 seconds. 1001, 1002, after the other person stops speaking and before you reply. So when they ask you what you're doing, just tell them taking a moment to really absorb what they said, because it's very important to you that you fully understand them. That should put a smile on their face. Who knows? They may even let you finish your sentences without interruption as well, after you've modeled it for them. And a bonus, what will surprise you on occasion as you pause is that ultimately what they said was not what you expected. The point they made was different than the one you thought was coming. So you have a pause to edit your response. Breaking the habit of replying too immediately will be really hard for some people. But if you start to insert the 2-second pause into your listening style, people will begin to see you differently. You will become a person who they feel really cares about them. And your words to them in response will be more valued and powerful in their lives, especially since your words are not all focused on yourself. Which brings us to the third hurdle to effective communication: filters. We all have them. It's human nature to hear things and see things in the context of what we expect to hear and see. This means we have a preconceived idea that shapes what we hear. This is most common in family relationships after years have passed of living together. I often work with couples who have been so jaded in their antagonism. I mean, they're coming to me because they're fighting. They've become so jaded in their antagonism towards each other that when one of them gives the other a compliment or encouragement, it's received as being critical. An example would be the husband telling his wife that she looked really beautiful today. And it would spark the reaction, "What do you say? I don't look good the other days?" Or her saying, "Thank you for helping me pick up the living room." Well, that tells him she's mad that he never helps out around the house, as being sarcastic the one time he did. Every attempt that they make at reaching out in new healthy behavior is torpedoed by the filter of past fights. Add to those filters the fact that each party in the relationship brought a dozen suitcases of past relational drama with them into the relationship, drama with parents, siblings, ex-romantic partners. It's a miracle that anyone ever succeeds at love. So, assume that you too have filters on your understanding and take steps to verify what you hear is actually what the other person meant you to hear. Now, this is really tedious and a pain, but it is a verbal workout that will produce fabulous results in understanding. When someone you care about makes a statement to you, after you wait your 2-second pause to be sure they're done, reply with, I really, really want to be sure I correctly understand your meaning. This is what I think I heard you say. And then rephrase what you heard in your own words. Do not just repeat their words. And when you have finished echoing their statement with your words, ask, is that what you meant to say? And if it is not, let go of it and grant them a do-over to restate their comment with you actually listening a second time. Again, repeat it back with your own words and zero commentary, and ask again if that matches their meaning. And when it does, then you can respond with your own ideas. The other person will then restate your comments in their words. Yes, this is all a major pain, but at least you'll understand the intent of each other's heart. Practicing a short season of doing this will make you both a great deal more attentive to the way you say things, since you'll become aware of how words can be misconstrued. Plus, when you're both trying really hard to understand each other, you will be less likely focused on your default desire, which is to be understood. Next, I want to share a tip on how to defuse a fight before it starts. This works for people in a relationship with others who they love, but have a difficult time living around. This can work for relatives, spouses, adult children, and other people that God has dumped into your life. These people breathe your air, leave their stuff all over in your space, and don't seem to care how their actions mess you up and how you are surviving on that one last nerve before you have a meltdown. In the past, your discussions have escalated into fights with lots of things you both wish you had never said, and a wall of resentment builds between you. So instead, I suggest that you follow this plan. When they mess up something on the first time, ignore it. Nobody's perfect, and nobody needs to be perfect for us to love them. This is a good opportunity to practice the fruits of the Spirit, patience, and kindness, along with grace. When they mess up the same thing a second time within, let's say, a month, keep quiet, but write down your note to yourself documenting the date of this incident and the first time. You'll still remember when that was. Do not say anything. It might just be a coincidence. Make sure to pray for them and yourself to remain in God's control. On the third repeat of the same thing, don't just react. Timing is critical. Pick a non-stress time to go to them and follow this script. I need to talk to you about a problem I'm having that involves you. You have done this behavior 3 times in the last month, and I don't know if you're aware of the effect that it's having on me. Say, when you, and then fill in the blank with a behavior or attitude that's a problem. I feel. Explain the negative impact it has on your existence and feelings. I need you to. So it's when you, I feel, I need you to outline a modified behavior that you need them to do differently, an awareness of the impact on you, or a helpful alternative attitude that will make your life better. Note, you're not bossing them around or judging what they are doing, nor condemning them, nor criticizing their character. Do not say you should, you always, or you never, because that is condemning a character flaw in them. Just discuss the current situation. Your only goal and only hope is when you bring it to their attention, their repeated behavior and its detrimental effect on you, that because they genuinely care about you, they will want to respond lovingly and make changes to improve your life. But give them some time to come to that conclusion on their own. It's not about what you think they should do. It's a chance for them to show you they love you by paying attention and responding. Be sure to thank them later on when you notice that they change their behavior. And if they don't, then there's nothing you can do to control them, and only God can change them. But you still have a God who promises to answer prayers made in faith. Can you trust him to address this need in your life? Now, the most important point I have to share today has to do with our effective communication with our Lord. In the Bible, it says, pray continually. 1 Thessalonians 5:17 in the NIV, or pray without ceasing in the ESV translation. So how are you all succeeding in that? If I lined up 100 Christians and asked them how well they were doing in praying without ceasing, most often I would get 100 long, drawn-out explanations of how much they are trying to pray during their day, lots of reasons and excuses as to why they're not successful. The problem is that over the generations, we as a church have lost track of the secret to praying without ceasing. It's no longer being taught. So here it is. When you pray, after you've given thanks and praise to God and made your request known to your Heavenly Father, spend the rest of your day actively listening for his answers. Over 95% of praying without ceasing is actively listening for his answers. Do not turn off your receiver. Do not become so focused on the noise in your day that you let it drown out the voice of God's Spirit. If you ask God for guidance and wisdom, he has promised to respond. James 1:5 states, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given to him. And this works for women too. The question is not if God will answer. The question is, are you actively listening, expecting to hear back from him in response to your request? Most of your praying without ceasing involves using your spiritual ears. God wants to be actively FaceTiming with you throughout your whole day. He created you to be in active relationship with him, real-time streaming all the hours you are awake and even in your dreams at night. But have you set a data or time limit on your God account? Practice your active listening to God, and you will greatly improve in your skill of listening to others as well. Now, I'm excited to announce a major development in communication. Have you heard about the new 5G broadband development that will allow you to download boatloads of data in record time? Aren't you looking forward to buying a new smartphone with 5G capability so that you can fill up your life with more data?
Down.
Me neither. What I'm talking about is 6G communication, which will greatly improve the reception and understanding of everything you say to your spouse. Are you interested? I thought you might be. 6G technology is based on pause, take a moment, breathe protocols. Have you read the Bible? Where does it ever say that God puts any value on efficiency, getting it done, hurry, 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 goal orientation? If we are to succeed in this mission that God calls marriage, we need to use his methods, not the culture's. So before you speak, pause. Consider your words. For God says, a good man brings good things out of the goods stored up in his heart, and an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in his heart. For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. Luke 6:45. Examine your heart before you move your lips. Screen the words you choose with the 6 G's. Number 1, gentleness. Let our words be kind. Choose to be the kindest person in the room, careful of the other person's feelings and emotional struggle. This has nothing to do with who is right or wrong. Philippians 4:5, let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Number 2, gracious. There is no need for anyone to be perfect to be worthy of our love. We choose to love and accept others exactly as they are. 2 Corinthians 4:15, that the grace that is reaching more and more people may cause thanksgiving to overflow to the glory of God. The 3rd G, generous. We are here to give of ourselves. We have time for others. How can we help? 2 Corinthians 9:7, God loves a cheerful giver. 4th G, gratitude. Quick to say thank you to your spouse is an act of praise to God for bringing them into your life. God notices and he smiles. 1 Thessalonians 5:18, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will in you, for you in Christ Jesus. Excuse me. The 5th G, genuine. We speak only truth in love based on our faith in God's love for us, remembering our vows before God and loved ones that we promised for better or for worse and until death parts us. We will not make threats to quit or leave, which would break those vows. We will not speak the lies of the devil over our marriage, no matter how discouraged or hurt or even betrayed we feel. We trust that God has our future in his hand and that he is in control even when we cannot see what he's doing. We know that God is all loving and that love compels him to save us, even from ourselves. We will be trustworthy to speak only that which we know to be the truth. Matthew 19:6 says, so we are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate. And the 6th G is godly. God's will for my life is for me to change and transform to become more like Jesus. His design for my life includes using my wife to stretch me and cause me to grow to be a better mate for her. I must surrender my reasonable plans and my right to my comfort, so that together we can become a glowing example of God's love and care. Since I choose for God to be in control, I accept that means I won't be. Sharing that kind of future with my wife will be worth it. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share these concepts with you. I'm now available to actively listen to your questions about these or anything else on your heart. I'll turn it over to Di.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ron. That's really good content. If you didn't notice, I put Ron's notes in the chat for you. You can easily download those so that you didn't have to remember all of that, because we are going to have to work on a lot of these things. I think I'll start with a question, and then anyone else who wants to jump in, all you have to do is unmute yourself, bottom left-hand corner, to ask a question. But are you finding, Ron, in the experience of people you're working with, that being in close quarters, staying at home, is bringing things to the surface? And what are some practical tips you're giving couples or even siblings or roommates, if that be the case, for how to be in close quarters and not drive each other crazy?
I think that there is a major uptick in the stress factor that everybody's having. And it isn't so much that we're living with other people, it's the fact that we're not living in the routine that has shaped our lives for so many years. And when I cannot go to work and do what is normal for me as an employee with the fellow workers and stuff, and I'm at home and I'm not used to having the whole day in quality time with my kids and my spouse, and I can't go to the park and I can't even go to a restaurant or anything. I think just that right there sets me up to be very irritable. I have definitely had some phone calls from marriages that were in crisis mode, as in we need to meet within 24 hours because we're really hurting. And the arguments are just going ballistic. So that is much more common than it was before we had to be sequestered. I think that there's a requirement on us that we need to evaluate our feeling of needing to be in control, life needing to be predictable, life needing to be reasonable. All of those things are critically important to our perspective of our being safe and healthy. And the truth of the matter is that God doesn't guarantee that to us. He guarantees that he loves us. He is there with us every moment of the day. But that is no guarantee that we're not going to be ending up in the middle of a tornado or a hurricane or an emotional firestorm. So I think that what's happening here is not unreasonable. I think that the way that we're wired and everything is almost predictable, and we're not the only ones. If this is happening at your home, I don't know that it's any comfort, but there are a whole lot of other people in the same boat, and there are some people who are much, much more at risk than we are.
It's good, thank you. Anyone else want to jump in with a question? All right, just me then. And I think that when I ask questions, I'm also speaking for those who are asking me questions, and you're more qualified than I am to answer them. But can you give, you spoke about stress, and I think stress is directly related to oftentimes how we're treating the people that we're closest to. Maybe you disagree with that, but it seems that when we're under stress, it tends to show up on those around us. Can you give maybe just a couple really practical, good first steps in how to not take stress out on our loved ones?
Well, let's start with trust. One of the things that I speak about the very first meeting that I ever have with any couple is about the role that trust plays in the relationship. Because what I have, I'm going back 7 years, I've been meeting with couples themselves. Before that, it was just men. And in that 7 years of meeting with literally hundreds of couples, there is one thing they all have in common. The dysfunction, the communication, all that stuff varies from couple to couple, and they all have their own unique flavors. But one thing straight across the board, without any variation, is that trust was broken between them. And in some cases, in too many cases, particularly the wife will report, well, even when we were dating, I never could fully trust him. There would be things that he did or said that broke my trust in him. And yet I've just tried to make the most of it because nobody's perfect, et cetera, et cetera. And so the thing that I tell him in our very first meeting is a job one. Before we deal with communication or acts of service or love languages or any of the other things that we are going to talk about, the absolute number one thing is to become trustworthy. Trust is earned, okay? Trust is what we earn over a season of time by consistent behavior. It isn't something like faith, have faith in your husband and your marriage. No, trust is earned the hard way. And it's only there when you've earned it. And so we need to start at some point, and he needs to make a declaration. This is going to be a top priority between us. I may not be perfect. I may not be able to keep all my promises, but I will always try to be trustworthy. If I can't come through and be there for dinner at 6 o'clock, like I said, I am going to do my best to call you ahead of time and let you know. So trust is the absolutely building block. It is more important in a marriage even than sharing the same faith. And because there are marriages out there in other cultures that are thriving based on deep trust, and they don't share my Christian faith, but it works for them. As far as giving other people grace in the home, I think that that has to come by prayer with God, recognizing that God is revealing to me in the middle of this virus, I'm in a testing ground and I'm seeing parts of myself and reacting to stuff that I thought I had control over. And now I'm realizing it has control over me. So when I become aware of that, I can either double down on self-control, good luck with that, or I can admit, God, I need you to help me because I'm a sinner in this and I'm weak in this. And this is an area that I need to put on the altar and have you trade it out and do a transformation in me regarding this. This is a growth opportunity.
Well done. That's good. Anyone else? If you have a question, you can go to the bottom left-hand corner of your screen and unmute yourself and feel free to ask Ron any questions that you have. I don't want to dominate here. All right, well, while you're thinking, I'll dominate. I think maybe just a couple more minutes here and then we can sign it out. We'll give everyone a way to connect with you, which actually is on those notes that I put in the chat for you. So if you'd like to be in contact with Ron or you have a question you'd like to ask him privately, he has graciously made himself available. He's already mentioned the years of experience he has counseling people in relationships. So I'll say that generally, if you're not someone who's married, this is a man with experience in relationships. Talk to me a little bit, and I know this is a little bit even out of, it's out of my season, it's out of your season, but so take a marriage and then throw a few kids at home on top of that marriage where everybody feels like they're on top of each other and frustrations start to run high, and just super ground level, practical, like 2-3 things to keep you from harming the people you love verbally or in your attitude, or even worse, in a given day. Is that a clear question?
Yeah. And I think that there is a pretty predictable trail of things. I live my life, and because of my experiences, I develop reasonable expectations. I mean, I get up every morning and brush my teeth and drink my coffee. I have a routine and everything, and there's a way that I expect things to go. And when things don't go according to how I expect them to go, then I get a little bit irritated. But that's okay. You know, I'm a big boy. I can live with that. And so as I continue to live with other people in my household and stuff, there are just more and more things happening that do not line up with the reasonable expectations of how I think they should behave, or how they should respect me, or how they should do what I need them to do or want them to do, or whatever. So here's the deal. If I ask anybody here, what does God owe you? Everybody's going to be unanimous. God doesn't owe me anything. And yet the truth is, when things don't happen the way we reasonably expect them to happen, then we get frustrated. We get irritated, we get frustrated, and the more that we live with that, the more that builds up in our stomach as we just swallow hard, and it becomes more angry. We have angst that we're living with, and it just builds up on us, and we're just trying to grit our teeth through it and not blow up at everybody. But we're not processing it. It's almost like we're denying it, but we have it under control. So we have ourselves under control, and we have our feelings under control, but we're not free to really react honestly about that. So this happens year round, whether there's a virus out there or not. And I think that it's really important that during the day, we reach out to someone who's not in our family. And we just reach out there and have a phone conversation or a Zoom meeting or something, and we just have a chance to process the frustration and the disappointment, or even the good things that happen, the wonderful things that happen, and now I'm kind of bummed out that I don't have anybody to share it with. That emotional processing with someone that we care about and who cares about us, especially when we're having a hard time. We share our feelings, we share our disappointment, we share our anger, and they hear us and they validate it, but we also agree, hey, what can you do? And this is where we need to trust God, and so we pray together, and then we're praying for each other. And that connection is outside of our nuclear family. That is with other people. Women need a couple friends like that, and men definitely need a couple friends like that, that they are under normal circumstances, when they're not COVID at home, okay? When we're not under a coronavirus thing, under regular, ordinary circumstances, we still need 1 or 2 phone calls a week with those people just to maintain a healthy equilibrium. With these situations the way they are right now, I think we might need 3 or 4 contacts a week with people. And it's not just me unloading my emotional baggage, but I'm listening to somebody else's stuff and encouraging them and commiserating with them. And that whole process gives me a feeling of not being quite so powerless, and expressing care for somebody else's problems, not just my own. And that whole thing is a really healthy exercise in processing the grief that happens when our reasonable expectations don't happen, and they're not going to happen. And God isn't going to give us everything the way that we think it should be or expect it to be. It's not his intention.
That's really good stuff. In fact, you covered my next question too, so I don't even need to ask it. So I will make it available to anyone else who would like to ask a question. You can unmute yourself, and I will just say while we're waiting, I tend to be one of those people that thinks I don't really need help, or I don't, I'm strong, I can just power through. And the grief, and this is so important to understand, but the grief that we experience that is not just due to you lost a loved one, it's you've lost a routine, or you've lost normalcy, or you've lost the ability to see friends, or you've lost the ability to go to work. Maybe you've lost your job, you've lost finances, income. All of that grief, as we know in the big scale of grief, has emotions that come with it, depression and denial and anger. And so I can't agree strongly enough that the importance of processing that grief, and I think that's the right way to say it, instead of, oh, you need help, which is really what we need, but you just need to be able to talk it out with somebody. And I find that it's very helpful to talk it out with somebody who's not my spouse, because he hears me process everything else. And it's nice for me to give him a break every now and then. And, my mom is stuck at home right now. She really needs me to need her right now. So I think it's really, that's incredibly wise advice / tool to put in our tool belt, is to find someone to process with. It really does help.
Yes.
Good. Anyone else? Anyone have a question that would like to speak up? Now is your chance. All right. Well, you have Ron's contact information in the handouts that he has graciously provided for you. All the work that he put into preparing this, he made available to you, which is not the usual. So thank you for being so gracious that way. Thank you for your time.
I would point out to everybody that there are actually two, because we left them as two. There's two handouts with it. There's the original one that I gave her, and then there's the addendum with the stuff I forgot to put in the first one. So yeah.
Yep. They're both in the chats. They have them both.
Okay. So download.
And so
they're not the same.
If they have questions, they're able to reach out to you via your contact info there, or you can reach out to Venture Church, and we will help you be in contact with Ron. And we're going to make this available for other people to see. So if anyone has an issue with that, please let me know. Otherwise, we'll just make the recording, which on my screen just mostly has Ron. You're all little thumbnails if you're even on there at all. So thank you for joining us. Ron, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you all.
Thank you very much.